Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Roundtable. It is Thursday, the 8th of June, and it is an absolute pleasure to have you with us. For the first time in 2 weeks, we are having a roundtable, and we asked you at 7 o'clock this morning that if we could make $80,000, we could do it. And we did it, and we thank everybody who made that possible, and to our entire crew and to our entire staff who worked so hard. Thank you very, very much. We appreciate it. And this is something that we've been looking forward to because we haven't had a roundtable panel since in 2 weeks.
Thank God, I've been stopping strangers on the street and the garbage man. Anybody talk politics to me. I've gained weight filling in the empty hours. It's awful.
I've been doing the same thing because my schedule hasn't changed as far as at night I would go through all the papers and like come up with stories. And then it was like, oh, we need it.
What was there anything in the news in the last week?
Well,
nothing big.
Here's the good news. I don't know, and maybe people will yell at me about this. I don't know. But to me, the one silver lining is we avoided the debt limit. Not talking anymore about that. We had been doing that for like 3 weeks straight. They got it all ironed out, and we didn't have to talk about it anymore. And if there was a silver lining, I think that was it. Now the silver lining appears to be smoke. That is coming from the north, and I think it's fair to. Oh, let me introduce everybody. I have to introduce everybody. I forget we've been here, but I haven't introduced our crew with you. By the way, it's a roundtable panel. We welcome your letters. Panel at WAMC.org. We'd love to have you. WAMC.org or panel at WAMC.org, and we'd love to hear what you have to say this morning. We're getting back to normal. I'm not saying this will be a normal show because I'm sure I'll give the phone number a few times and we'll forget. I'll throw it over to Ray.
If people send in money now, do we get to keep it?
No. No. That goes into the lockbox for the next time. But former Times Union Associate Editor Mike Spain is in the house. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, and congratulations on that amazing achievement that just came to a conclusion a few minutes ago. And you guys should all be proud. You have an enormous, wonderful base of listeners that have come out to support you, and that is really impressive.
Thank you, Mike. That's really nice. I appreciate that. I know some people will say, "Oh, it took a really long time." We did about 2 or 3 hours a day, and I think I don't have the exact number, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood of about 19 hours that we did it in of making that most of $1 million. That ain't bad. And I'm very grateful for all of the wonderful people that helped us, and of course the terrific crew we have here that made that possible. Vice President and Editorial Development at the New York Press Association, Judy Patrick. Good morning, Judy. How are you?
I am good, and congratulations from me as well. I just want to say you all look exhausted.
We are.
Yeah.
Although I think I'm exhausted because my dog was up all night. But yes. No, it was a lot. It was a lot. And Rosemary Armao is here, investigative journalist and adjunct professor at RPI and UAlbany. Rosemary,
triple congrats, and the food out there is just stunning. I want the drive to continue just another week for that.
I didn't have breakfast yet. When's our next break? We got a break.
I think I might have eaten it all.
Oh, all right. Well, that's fine. You deserve it. Panel at WAMC.org, panel at WAMC.org. I'll also just address, something that we've addressed many, many times over the last 2 weeks, but for this show and for this, the elephant in the room is that Alan isn't in the room, and it's our first panel with Alan since his retirement. And when we made the announcement, of course, we were here. But other than that, we haven't done a panel without Alan. And so obviously we want to thank him for all that he's done and contributed to this program, but also to thank him and realize that with his retirement, now he's listening and commenting and maybe he'll
criticizing. He's criticizing. It's Alan. Let's not forget.
Probably.
Clearly, a major impetus for contributions, especially today, was in honor of Alan and all the wonderful wishes for his
so much
happy retirement. It was just very uplifting to hear everybody come together on that topic.
Well, here we are, Mike Spain, Rosemary Armao, and Judy Patrick, and we are going to get to the topics at hand because that's what we promised you we would do. Panel at WAMC.org, panel at WAMC.org. Noxious air spreads across the U.S. Conditions are expected to get better, but driven by wildfires in Canada, the smoke over the Northeast is spreading, with alerts extended to the Midwest and the Carolinas. As of right now, Washington, D.C., the air quality is hazardous. In New York City, it is very unhealthy. It is moderately bad in Chicago and Boston. The level of pollution Wednesday was higher than the worst day in San Francisco after major wildfires in 2018 in New York yesterday. This is obviously a big problem. And, I mean, quite frankly, right now, as we sit in this room, all you smell is smoke. And it's hard to see quite down the street. And not always a bad thing here, but anyway. Cheap shot, I apologize. But you think, wow. And it's and my brother, I was talking to my brother who lives in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and they have it too. It's really stunning when you think about it. Rosemary?
Well, I think that what we're seeing, of course, is a portent of the future. There will be more fires, not fewer. More dryness, more bizarre weather because it's climate change, which we continue to bury our head in the sand. There's going to be a lot more sand in which to bury our heads in the future as this continues. And I find that very, very sad. I also think it's a height of hypocrisy, and Joy Reid pointed this out last night. I don't usually quote her, but she pointed out that we're seeing the PGA right now support one of the major distributors of fossil fuel, which contributes to climate change, which contributes to these fires, which makes it difficult for us to breathe. And we don't see the connection between the money that a small group will get and the air we breathe.
Mike?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. And even in the state of Texas, there's an effort to. They are actually one of the most sustainable states because of the enormous amount of windmill energy that they have produced, and yet they're backing away from that, and they're passing rules in their power grid, and they're passing laws that promote gas and promote oil. And it's political, and it just seems this is the time when we should be stepping up our movement away from fossil fuels, because now we see a tangible result of that folly.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be a long, smoky summer because the Canadian wildfire season has started much earlier than normal. It's much more intense than normal. There are far more fires than typical, and usually it starts much later in the summer. From a local perspective, we waited all winter to be able to go outside and have a picnic or go for a walk, and now we're all stuck inside because of the smoke, because it's just dangerous to be out there. But we need to recognize that the reason that we're having this problem is because of climate change. It's too hot, it's windy, it's dry, and that is encouraging these wildfires to roar in Canada, and they're going to be roar here in the U.S.
It is amazing that this has been going on now for some years in our West, and we just read the stories, oh, tish, 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 but it really feels different when that smoky smell is in the air right around us and the skies are blacked out.
And when it happens in the most populous metro area in the country, so many millions of people are affected by it. And it maybe it's the wake-up call we need to just see what needs to be done and to just stop wishing it away and just trying to believe the non-believers and really accept that we can do something about this if we try.
Do you think it'll make a difference?
I'm optimistic that it will make some difference. I don't think it'll be a flip of a switch by no means, but I think for people on the fence, this has certainly been a convincing and devastatingly convincing experience that should make them aware that we are we're heading towards disaster unless we take really quick action.
Yeah, this hasn't been just one day. This is we're on our third or fourth day of this, and it doesn't look like any clearings in sight. High school athletic events at the end of the school are being canceled. Kids can't go outside to play. Yankees baseball games are being canceled at LaGuardia.
Phillies bank games are being canceled.
My grandchildren in New York City school was canceled today. Because they don't want them out. It's not safe.
LaGuardia had a ground stop today. They weren't sending flights out.
Wow.
The photos, and I'm sure everyone has seen the photos of the skyline of Manhattan, where 24, or 48-hour difference, where it's a crystal clear skyline, and you can hardly make out the buildings, the World Trade Tower, et cetera.
Looks like China.
We have to go take a break, but your former newspaper put up a picture of this was online last night, a picture of the New York skyline and the Albany skyline, and both just inundated. It was really very very stark to see those images. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I get to say this. We'll return to our panel discussion with Mike and Judy and Rosemary. Panel at WAMC.org. We will return after this. Good morning. Welcome back to the Roundtable and to our panel discussion. Yes, you heard us, a panel discussion. We're back. We are done with fundraising, and we have a show. And we are very, very happy. We didn't know just when we walked in the building 2.5 hours ago if we'd have a show today, and here we are. So we're thrilled, and we thank all of you. Mike Spain, Judy Patrick, and Rosemary Armao make up our group. This morning, we welcome you, panel at WAMC.org, panel at WAMC.org. We go to this letter. Does anyone have any information about how this smoke is affecting local agriculture? Any idea on that, Judy Patrick or Rosemary Armao?
Judy Patrick was the one who was asked, because today in Greenwich, it's take your tractor to school day.
Drive your tractor to school day, I think. I passed 5 tractors heading in that direction with young people aboard. And typically at the end of the school year in Greenwich, which is a agricultural community, the kids for years, for years, have taken one day to drive their tractor to school. And it's a wonderful illustration of the fact that farming is still alive and doing okay in that neck of the woods. So
small farming too, right?
Small farming,
medium size.
There were some pretty big tractors I passed this morning, though. Pretty big tractors. But my daughter who is in Rochester. She was calling her cat inside yesterday because she was concerned about her cat's breathing. And we're all gardeners too. We're worried about how our crops are going to, how my tomato plants are going to fare. We just want some sunshine or some blue skies.
It's bad enough they didn't have rain. Now there's no rain or sunshine.
Right,
so.
But I do worry about the animals, especially the cats and dogs. Yeah. A lot of them are inside.
Too. A lot of stress for cattle.
We have a lot of breathing to do.
That's right. Well, hopefully we all have a lot of breathing to do. Let's see. Susan writes, so glad to have you back. I'm glad folks are making a connection between climate change and these wildfires. Astoundingly, the New York State Legislature has yet to vote on the Packaging Reduction Act that Judith Hanks Group and other like-minded groups have been advocating for, which would reduce plastics, which are an important contributor to climate change. One thing that is in our power to do is to call the leadership in the Senate and Assembly, so an issue there. Let's see. Also, Irene asks about, is this having an effect on the birds? Are there fewer? It seems like there's fewer birds.
No, they got to fly through that haze. It's true, and all that fine particulate matter will fall to the ground, to the air, to the water at some point. And affect the environment that way. Just last week, I read a story about how you can buy an N95 mask really cheap now because the demand for them had fallen precipitously, and that you could buy like 100 for $2.
Well, the governor's giving them away for free now.
Yeah, and now people are actually scrambling to get their N95s out of the closet and put them back on.
Yeah, I was wearing mine today just when I was outside, and I think it helps. Yeah.
Absolutely. 1-800-323-92. No, see, damn it. I knew I was going to do that. Ray and I were saying, what was the over-under? I knew giving the phone number. And it was like, it was going to be one low. Lily says, tractors in Greenwich. Yes, but many kids are sick today in Greenwich because of the air and parents are picking them up.
Yeah, and a lot
of
that. Yeah, and the tractors you have to ride. Some of them have cabs, some of them don't. I saw a few older tractors without cabs. So minutia from Greenwich.
I'll take.
You could even drive your lawn tractor apparently and be.
Well, you used to you see that a lot. There were a couple of people that had DWIs and so forth, and you'd see them. They would regularly drive their lawn tractors to Stewart's to pick up a 12-pack.
Yep.
That's so colorful, these old farming communities in our state.
How quaint.
So cute.
It is.
Yeah, they're hard to pass when you want to go someplace. Lawn tractors don't go that fast.
Well, it is something that you think about. Do you... Susan writes, do you hear your own cognitive dissonance? And unless the tractors are electric, it is terrible for the climate to use them as transportation for driving children to school. Well, we're not...
They're not doing it every day. It's a symbolic thing. Come on. We blow up fireworks once a year to celebrate national independence. That's not really a great thing for dogs or the environment either. Should we stop eating ice cream altogether, too? Take all the joy out of life.
Thank you, Rosemary.
Yeah, Rosemary, thank you.
The threshold for that joy extends all the way to golf for some people.
Oh, I so want to talk about that story. Can we commandeer the panel?
Yeah, we can pivot if you want. So anyway, the weather will be the weather, and hopefully, I think Judy's right. We're going to be talking about this for a little while and see what happens, and it's going to be interesting over the next several days.
Will we be talking about it as long as we were talking about the debt ceiling? Let's hope not.
A very good
Except this
question.
Isn't going. I mean, as much as the air may clear, it may rain, and we might get back to sunny skies and beautiful weather, this problem is not going away.
Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll continue. I want to talk about the PGA Tour and the Live Golf merger.
Yes, please.
And we will do that right after this short break. Good morning. Welcome back to the Roundtable. I want to get to the golf story. Just a couple letters before we do that. Phyllis writes to us and says, we took the initiative to buy roof panels. Our collection is down by half these last 3 days. That's interesting, too, of what the impact on solar energy. Also, we go to... Marty, I'm sorry. I noticed that the birds are strangely silent as well. That's also an interesting...
I noticed that too, now that it's mentioned.
Now that you mention it.
Yeah, I did hear birds today, but maybe not as loud as they would ordinarily be. But they're out there struggling.
Sound like? Tweet cough. I'm not making fun of it. I don't want to hear that, but that's just very sad. All right, let's go to this story, which is about. I never really thought that anyone on our panel would say, "Let's talk about the golf story." But this really is an interesting story that the PGA and LIV golf deal has been done. These two major powerhouses in golf are merging. The PGA Tour, is the world's preeminent professional golf league, and Live Golf, a Saudi-funded upstart whose emergence over the past year and a half has cleave the sports in two have agreed to join forces. The pact is complicated, it is incomplete, and numerous golfers hate it. They are directing their wrath at the architects of the deal. So one of the things about this that I think is most interesting is that it came really from left field. Nobody thought it was in the works. Nobody thought it was coming. And it surprised a lot of people that these talks were either underway. The PGA Tour holds tournaments nearly every weekend, mostly in the United States, but also in other countries in North America, Europe, and Asia, with prize pools worth millions of dollars. The tour has been the home to practically every male golfer you can name: Jack Nicklaus, Tiger Woods, Arnold Palmer, and so on. It has relationships with, but is separate from, the organizations that stage men's golf for majors: the Masters, the PGA, the U.S. Open, and the British Open. The LPGA, which runs the women's tour, is separate. Live Golf began in late 2021 with former PGA player Greg Norman as its commissioner and billions of dollars in backing from the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund, which is known as the Public Investment Fund. Live lured several PGA Tour players, including the major champions, including Phil Mickelson, with massive purses and guaranteed payouts that far surpassed what they could earn on the established PGA circuit. They promised a sharp break from golf's fusty traditionalism. That's the word the New York Times used, fusty. Starting with its name, which, when pronounced, rhymes with give. Live, but is actually the Roman numeral for 54, the number of holes played in each tournament. See what they did there?
I didn't know that.
Isn't that cool? Live
Nothing
has,
about that group is cool. No.
But I'm sure a PR firm
came up with that.
Came up with that for that.
Well-paid PR
Wealthy
firm.
PR firm.
Live had
More
music
wealthy now.
blaring at its events, looser dress codes, team competitions, and tournaments that lasted 3 days instead of 4. Further, and of particular appeal to potential players, while the PGA Tour tournaments cut golfers with the worst scores after 2 rounds, Live did not cut anybody. Acrimonious, to put it lightly, the answer to the question, what was the relationship between the leagues before the deal to align, which makes this really... again, why it was so surprising. They announced this yesterday, the creation of a new entity that would combine their assets as well as those of the DP World Tour and radically change golf's governance. Rosemary.
Oh yeah, I just think this is a terrible decision. It is not just about sports, and in fact, I think sports journalists are the last people on earth who should be covering the story. Look at how in depth they went on Tiger Woods. This is a nefarious act that goes against the wishes of many of the players who are not consulted about this merger, and it aligns the PGA, which is supposed to be a feel-good sports involvement, healthy enterprise, with a torturer, a murderer, a man who rules a country that holds down women and criminalizes being gay. It's just a terrible look. I don't understand why it was needed except for one thing, and that is money. One more reason to hate golf for those who do.
Yeah, and one more aspect of it is that Live has been welcome to the Trump golf.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Golf courses and resorts, and it just illustrates how. I mean, I like the idea of an upstart league kind of competing with the established league. I mean, I'm certainly there's people who have complaints about the way the PGA operates, et cetera, and it's rather elite, but the Saudis coming in with their billions of dollars to back it just taints it so bad. And it just illustrates exactly what you said, Rosemary. It's all about money.
Yeah, well, let's be clear. The Saudis are just trying to whitewash or burnish their image. They're trying to make people forget about the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. They're trying to make people forget about their treatment of women in the country. They want people to forget about their involvement in 9/11. I mean, there are people in America who are outraged by this,
including the 9/11 families, and they feel betrayed by this, and indeed they have been.
Right, and the fact that it did just come out of the blue talks a little bit about the journalism that was involved in following this project. Because even though I do agree I do think that there are some good sports journalists who do try to do some investigative work. There aren't very many of them, and this one slipped right by them.
Well, it slipped by news reporters too, and in fact, the Saudis. I'm sure it was that well-paid PR agency we mentioned, gave the story. It came out of the blue. It wasn't in the Washington Post or the New York Times or any of the sports publications, ESPN. It was on CNBC, which is not a very good business broadcast. And that's because plainly they want us to see this as a very good decision that will help the business of golf and not about what it is, a betrayal, a moral betrayal.
Remember the Saudis hosted the World Cup was it last year? They were, no, it was Qatar.
Qatar.
Yeah. I mean, it was, but they are trying to get more involved in the sports that we all care about.
Well, they see that the value of the benefits of being associated with something so popular worldwide that they can just glom onto it with their billions of dollars and really, as you said, whitewash their image, which is
they're using the term all over, sports washing, which is the idea that you watch this lovely golf game in a beautiful setting, well financed, which it obviously will be now with the Saudis, and forget about holding down women, criminalizing gay activity, killing journalists, holding down transparency. It is and
freedom
and promoting
of speech doesn't
freedom of speech, promoting fossil fuel, even though it's destroying the earth. These are not good people. Why do we have to associate with them?
You almost feel sorry for, or I do, some of the professional golfers who said no to live and said, no, you can pay me as many millions of dollars as you want. I'm not going to go there. I won't go.
It'll be interesting to see how they react.
Well, and I guess that's part of my question. I mean, it seems like it seems like a done deal, and yet there's a lot of aspects of the deal that aren't done. And will the outcry from players and other officials within the PGA have some impact on any changes or even torpedo it? I don't know.
That they announced this without having it all worked out is probably part of the strategy. Like, you can't put toothpaste back in the tube, but I'll bet the outcry will influence that, and maybe talks will break down. It's almost like, anything, if it isn't ironed out, and when it comes down to the fine print of everything, it may not work out, and I kind of hope it doesn't.
I hope so too, and I hope you're right. But there's a lot of money at stake.
Yeah.
And there is a push that, this is sports. It's different than politics. Many people think that.
Remember the South African rugby team, the Springboks, would go around the world, and people were protesting it. They even came here to Albany back in 1981, I think, or 80, and they, many in the world said, we need to boycott South Africa in every way, culturally and economically, and that includes sports also. And others said, no, sports is different. It transcends. We don't want it to get in the way. And I understand that, but this is exactly weaponizing sports to use it to promote really vile, repugnant positions.
Yeah. And the idea that sports is above it all, like the Olympics, for example, that's a fallacy. And please let us recognize this. I think that statements from the PGA officials yesterday were, again, tailored by a public relations firm. Like, yes, we sympathize with the families of 9/11. Saudi Arabia engineered that. Engineered the attack on the United States. We didn't speak or speak about Japanese people in less than derogatory terms for 50 years, yet we're going to play golf with the Saudis. And at the same time that we feel for them, we are, after all, allies with the Saudi Arabians.
Yeah, and let's not forget it's about a little bit about the oil as well. And as we deal with the haze outside our this office here, we have to recognize that everything is interrelated.
And they just announced this week that the Saudis on their own was going to restrict the output of barrels of crude oil to raise the price. So
great allies.
That's going to hit us.
Great allies. Let's play golf with them.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So it just seems like there's you look at what's happening in Albany with the Albany Firebirds and Antonio Brown, and you realize that things that used to be like fairly stable, and you go in and there isn't much stability anymore in anything. And I realize that particular league is not up to the level of the PGA or LIV, but it certainly shows how a few people can make a huge difference in a sport and the way it's run, and throw a wrench into things that really make you wonder what's going on.
Well, at least people's protests and elevating the counter opinions have modified the way, like the NFL, for example, deals with the issue of racism. They used to ignore it and try to keep it out. Now they seem to have embraced diversity. And, it's not perfect, but at least they're heading in the right direction. I think the public and the viewers and the fans do have have a lot of influence here. And if people stop watching these tournaments and advertising revenue starts tanking, it will make an impact. Of course, the problem is that the Saudis just have gazillions of dollars and they can keep bankrolling it to keep their message out there.
We welcome your letters. Panel at WAMC.org. Elaine says, I take issue with Rosemary's statement, one more reason to hate golf. My husband, a fanatical golfer, is in a rage over this merger. He actually has been using this topic as a platform to discuss the current political situation with his Republican golfer friends and trying to make them understand that this is a wider issue and one that implicates Trump and his family, as well as in terms of Trump's cozy relationship with the Saudi royal family and the murder of Khashoggi.
I'm not a golfer. I'll say that. But I do understand how some people are devoted to it. Well, I'm not sure I understand it, but I recognize that people are devoted to it, and it's really important. It's a way that people, even an amateur golfer, can one day, just once or twice, hit a ball like Tiger Woods hit it, and it's exhilarating. I understand that, and it's perfectly fine. And I'm impressed by that note. I think there's a lot of amateur golfers who are like that fella, who probably are appalled at this too. And maybe it's good in the sense that it gives you an opportunity to look at what's happening in the sport.
Well, there again is a difference between optimism and pessimism. I also salute your husband for what he's doing. However, many of our sports have an impact on the rest of our life that we ignore, and golf courses are a good measure of that. They are huge users of water at a time when there are droughts worldwide. They are involved horribly in politics, as Donald Trump has made clear, and you can't love it unadulterated. It comes with a big cost, and it needs to be acknowledged.
We have a few more letters on this subject, and I think about 3 minutes, so let me try to get to as many as I can. Mike writes, make no mistake, no small part of this proposed deal is about the Saudis funneling money to Trump. The PGA avoided tournaments at Trump-owned courses. I am sure that under the deal, Trump courses will be used in tournaments in a way that will funnel serious money to Trump.
Well, you think?
That's from
The latest
Mike.
report showed that he made $1 billion on his businesses while he was in the White House, and more than half of that came from foreign-owned businesses. He has totally ignored the emoluments clause of the Constitution and got away with it because we have a legal system that takes time. He took advantage of that.
Alana wants to know, so will the PGA lose corporate sponsors? Good question.
Yeah, and they have some very powerful corporate sponsors, and in fact, the advertising is what really fuels the PGA Tour, because the people who watch golf tend to spend big bucks on luxury items, and so it's one of the most. Even though the ratings are not particularly high on the Golf Channel, the revenue is.
So what do you think the chances are, Judy? Do you see corporate sponsors dropping out?
It's still a way to reach the audience they want. So probably it won't be a complete abandonment.
And this is what the moral collapse of civilization looks like.
Right.
Right. Will people who love to watch golf stop watching because of this? I think the blowback has just started. It's just starting to build, but I don't know how sustained it will be and whether or not, at the end of the day, we'll have a live Golf Channel, and people will love watching it.
Michael writes, money is neutral. When a system like capitalism puts money above all else, what else would you expect? John writes, roughly 2 million acres of land are used by golf courses in the U.S. They deforest the land and damage biodiversity. Golf courses waste water, overuse pesticides, and fertilizer. Yeah. So there are other
That's what
issues.
I'm talking about. You should see it in the Middle East where there's no water for drinking.
And yet you fly over the golf course and it's all green
absolutely.
as can be. Yeah.
And finally from Michelle, who writes, this is obviously a way for the Saudis to launder donations to the Trump crime family. Kushner's already got $2 billion from the Crown Prince. It is disgusting. And Matthew says, at least as far as sports radio is concerned, there has been intense coverage and critical discussion of the PGA Live merger. The hypocrisy of the commissioner's previous statements, replayed several times, the complete disregard for player input, forcing players to accept payment from the Saudis, which they previously rejected, and much, much more. We'll pause there. We'll take a break. We welcome you. Panel at WAMC.org. Panel at WAMC.org. We'll be right back. Good morning. Welcome back to the Roundtable and to the panel discussion.
I have missed these off the air sessions. Wow.
That's good. That's good. I'm glad we're back and glad, wonderful to have such close friends here this morning as well. Seems certainly very apropos. I want to remind you that if you would like to be a part of our program, panel at WAMC.org. If you're new to the area and you've only been here for 2 weeks, we have the show called The Roundtable. And we go from 9 to noon, and from 9 to about 10:50, we do a panel, and we have experts come on and we talk about different issues, and that's exactly what we're doing today. We have Mike Spain, Judy Patrick, and Rosemary Armao. It's been about 2 weeks since we've been together. Mm-hmm. We're back. We are thrilled, and we thank everyone who made that possible by giving to the fund drive and the lockbox and doing what you needed to do to make that a reality. And we love you for it, and thank you so very much. All right, let us begin with, but let's us continue. And I would like to talk about the story that I've been fascinated with the story for a long time. But what I want to talk about is what's going on at CNN. Chris Licht is out at CNN. He is leaving the network. He had a very turbulent time running the news organization, and he was there just over a year, just about a year. 13 months. And this is the New York Times first line. At 7 a.m. on Wednesday, as a cloud of smoke enveloped Manhattan, Chris Licht left his apartment building and strolled half a block to Central Park for a meeting with his boss, David Zaslav. The men had taken this park walk before in early 2020. Mr. Zaslav used the same verdant setting to offer a job that Mr. Licht would later describe as a calling. And this time the walk was briefer and the message tougher. Mr. Licht was fired after just 13 months. His abrupt exit was the latest convulsion for one of the world's preeminent news organizations, whose unyielding string of crises had sapped a newsroom morale, eaten into profits, and raised questions about the viability of down-the-middle TV journalism in a polarized age. That from the New York Times. I'm going to deviate from that in asking some questions here about what happened. One of them being that Chris Licht there's been a target on him for a while as far as getting rid of him. He has been the staff has had its reservations. Many of the executives within the company have had their reservations, and the big thing that was supposed to save him and show his vision off and give him the cred that he so much wanted to show the world that what he intended to do, which is to make CNN a more centrist news organization, was to have a town hall with Donald Trump. Somehow he thought that was a good idea. It turned out not to be on several fronts. One of them being that it just became a PR nightmare for CNN. It brought back all of the old controversies about CNN letting just a free reign,
Free ride, basically.
a free ride.
Yeah.
And then welcome the Atlantic magazine, who writes a profile
Scathing.
of scathing profile.
Good word.
Man, I read that last night.
That was
from
so
top
good,
to
wasn't
bottom.
it?
It was really good. It's really filled with a lot of intrigue and great job on the reporting. So a couple of things. And that's why I'm so fascinated to talk about this with you all, the three wonderful journalists in the room. But first of all, the Atlantic had access, and they were there, and they were looking at...
Some say too much access.
Yes, too much access.
Lick especially saying that today.
Well, and CNN's PR firm was fired because they allowed the access, which I thought was interesting. What happened was that one of the things that came out in this, it was a scathing profile. There's no question about it. But one of the things that came out in it is the big complaint about the Trump town hall was that it was a rally. That the people who were invited were, and they said they were handpicked, and they were undecided, neutral Republicans who didn't know, and that turned out not to be the case. They were all Trump supporters, to the point where in the article, Trump was even saying, "Why are they doing this? Like, I don't even understand why they would do this, of having all of our people there, and everything they asked for, they got." And then a lot of trouble ensued. This article comes out which shows that he had great contempt for the staff, for his predecessor Jeff Zucker, and also probably didn't have what it would take to get out of this tailspin.
He also had a very high regard for himself,
yes,
which does not help in these situations. You mentioned that too in the Media Project today, Judy, that the article is full of his praise of himself. He lost 60 pounds. He works with a trainer. He can lift more weights than his predecessor. It just fed into this idea of him as a completely self-absorbed and wrong. His business view at CNN was just wrong. It cost them even more viewers than they had lost. It cost them more money than they have lost. And as it is, anybody at CNN has to contend with a decline in cable news overall, all the stations, with increased competition from stations like Newsmax 1, which actually has beat CNN for the first time ever in recent months.
It's pretty embarrassing for CNN.
Very embarrassing, yeah. So he had a difficult job, and he made it worse with his self-regard and his disdain for his staffers, which includes some of the most talented people in broadcast journalism.
And we're talking about this in large part because CNN is such a preeminent news organization. It was really the first to pioneer cable news, live 24 hours a day, and built a wonderful network of reporters all over the world. And so it's something we have cared about. But when Discovery Warner bought CNN, this David Zaslav, who's the president, he has from the beginning said, we've got to move you, we've got to get you away from being liberal, left-leaning, with this left tilt. And the reaction has been to actually just be more MAGA, like trying to court the MAGA, the Trump supporters, and it hasn't worked. And the journalists there would say, well, we haven't been left-leaning. We have been trying to hold people accountable and to tell the truth. And so that is the challenge for any news organizations today.
This gets into the whole issue of both one-sidism journalism, where you report what one side says and then you report what the other side says, even though the other side might be insane and completely false, lying, everything.
Or Trump.
And portray it as even-handed journalism.
Right.
You know, the winner of the 2020 election was Joe Biden. But the winner of the 2020 election was Donald Trump. You know what I mean? And telling it that way is not journalism. That's just a regurgitation of both sides rather than covering the news and telling people what happened. And the media, I have to say, has not engaged in both sidism mostly. But CNN was moving back in that direction rather than reporting the hard facts, whatever they may be.
And even by reporting the hard facts, I mean, Chris Licht, as profiled in The Atlantic, but was under the impression that as long as you said this is a lie, then you were going to be okay. And
so you could say whatever you want.
You can say whatever you want, and then if you call it out as a lie, then you've done your job. The problem, especially with the town hall with Donald Trump and Caitlin Collins, who I will just admit is a journalist I very much admire, was that yes, she had the facts and the wherewithal to call him out on it, but it was 300 to 1.
Yeah, she was drowned out.
She was drowned out because
the
they had a crowd of people who were supporting the president. He was calling her nasty. I didn't realize this, but during the breaks, he was mocking her during the breaks, and she was sort of off stage, and the audience was going against her. I mean, what employer would put their employee in a situation like that?
Not only that, Joe, but the Atlantic article pointed out that before that town hall, Licht goes to Trump and says, hey, go out there and have fun. It was giving him permission to do the whole Trump act.
Does anyone know, has it been revealed what the negotiations with Trump were regarding who the audience would be? You know, if there was any deal there that would put favorable people in the audience.
My understanding in the article seemed to be that Trump kept asking for this, and this, and they gave it to him.
Yes.
And Trump was continually surprised that they were actually getting in and assumed they just wanted the ratings and the money.
Right.
Which is apparently true.
Probably absolutely true. There is a part of the article, at the beginning of the article, of the Atlantic article, where the reporter meets with Chris Licht moments after, and he looks like he'd been beaten up in a bar brawl on 9th Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
But what did he expect? That's what I couldn't get over. It's like, what do you expect? What don't you know? And how could you misread a situation like that? I mean, there's many things you can say about Chris Licht, but he's not a dumb guy of how you think. And I know ego obviously comes into this, but that you come in, and by the way, for people who don't know, his background was initially with Joe Scarborough, who was a former Florida congressman, and he worked with him on MSNBC, and then helped develop Morning Joe, and then went to work.
For Colbert.
He went for Colbert, but he went to CBS. That's right. He went to CBS in the morning and then was tapped for Colbert. He went to CBS morning show before going to Colbert.
Well, he was also on the Morning Joe show, which is MSNBC.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So he went from the what was it, the Scarborough Report, to Morning Joe, to the CBS morning show, to Colbert, to CNN.
But as has been pointed out, none of those involve the worldwide scope and the number of employees. CNN is a gigantic organization.
International. They're all...
he did not have the experience for that. And that's okay. You know, lots of people grow into a job. He, though, took a stand that he was always right. The day after the town hall, which was just universally panned, he was telling people, no, we did a great job. You know, it's exactly what we wanted. And he made people like Jake Tapper and Anderson Cooper go on and talk about how CNN was doing it the right way. That must have galled and scraped at them because they did not think that.
Yeah, I think it was calculated. If you remember, this was the day after the E. Jean Carroll lawsuit, where Donald Trump was found liable of sexual assault. And in the Tim Alberta Atlantic piece, it's noted that whether it's Zasloff or Lick that called into the control room because and one of the chyons, that wording underneath that scroll that goes underneath the live picture mentioned that the word sexual abuse, and they said take it out. Do not take it down. Do not reference sexual abuse or sexual assault when you're talking about Donald Trump on the cryon. And so that level of control from the very tip top means that the next guy, the successor, or the next person succeeding Licht is going to have the same thing to contend with. It's not center. It's more pro Trump.
Also, it's the CEO of CNN who is in a makeshift control room behind a college gymnasium that's been turned into a debate setting, and he's running the show and is calling the shots as to what camera, what's in the cryon, and that's a lot of power to have when you assume it would normally be done by a team.
It gets into the whole dynamic of whether the CEO, the publisher, and the newspaper or magazine situation, whether they should really have a wall between them and the newsroom. What do you think, Rosemary?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think that CEOs are about business and strategy and global reach, and that news should be left to the extremely talented stable of anchors and reporters that CNN has. And they were not given any sort of, or at least not enough say, and they still aren't. The Zasloff continues to be a problem. He'll pick the next guy, even though he'll be a little more slow, if not careful, about who that will be. I think it will be a guy, but and his pro-right, what people are calling anti-woke centrality. That's really new,
that's a scary term, isn't it?
The new term that's come in. You're not really pro-Trump, although that's kind of a separate issue.
But you're anti-woke.
Which again,
what does that even mean?
Yeah.
If you can't define
you're
woke,
for justice? Oh, how dare you!
If you
you're
can't
for equality,
really define woke, how can you be anti-woke?
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Also, I mean, you dance with them that brung us. You have Wolf Blitzer. You have Anderson Cooper. You have Caitlin Collins.
Yeah,
you
stable.
You have Jake Tapper.
Christina
Harlow.
Amanpour.
Yeah,
Christina
Amanpour, huge. Yeah.
I mean, and even Chris Wallace. I mean, but you have. I'm sorry. I don't think how many of these games is Wolf Blitzer going to play? I mean, I just it seems ludicrous to think that someone who's been in the business for as long as Wolf Blitzer's been in the business, or that Gloria Borger's been in the business, or that Jake Tapper's been in the business are going to change. In fact, in the article, it mentions that Jake Tapper's show was actually one that was used as a role model, as a model for of what they wanted to be, of a more centrist program. And then when they threw Jake Tapper after they got rid of Chris Cuomo, they threw Jake Tapper into the 9 o'clock slot, and the show did horrible. Mm-hmm. And now you wonder, well, I don't know. I know there were plans in the works for Caitlin Collins to take over the 9 o'clock. I don't know whether that's going to happen now or not.
Oh, yeah, because Licht's gone. He was the one who promoted her. She's good, though. She's a talent.
Well, and the other thing from the very beginning was, I mean, the other part of this article, there's so many aspects of this article that are really fascinating, but one of them is that basically, and I think you may have mentioned this from the very beginning, but that Chris Licht was looking to get rid of Don Lemon, and he put him in a really bad position. He knew he was going to fail in that morning show.
Oh, yeah. He goes, oh, this is a big promotion. No, you don't get pulled out of primetime and put on early morning and say that's a promotion. And only someone as dumb as Don Lemon would ever see it that way.
I just wonder, is when Chris Licht took the job, there was a list to get rid of people, because he did. He forced a lot of people out.
Well, one of his
Brian Stelter.
Brian, that was the first one. He did not like, and it wasn't just that he he got rid of Seltzer, because Oliver Darcy, who's in there now, is really great, but he has no program because he took the program off. He did
Right.
not want criticism of
Reliable
the media.
sources. Yeah.
Right. And one of the real valid criticisms, I'm a fan of Brian Seltzer, but one of the criticisms valid against him was that he was a big Zucker pro fanboy. And so he never criticized CNN. And so Licht's answer, I think Zaslav's answer, was get rid of the whole program. So that's really bad. But I think that his failure to address a real weak prime time schedule was big on the list. If he had done that and there'd been all the other failures, he'd be okay.
Yeah, and I think he took a perfectly good morning program
Yeah.
and introduced change that it didn't need. And I also a shout out to Oliver Darcy, who's the surviving media critic at CNN, who wrote after the disastrous town hall what a disaster it was, and was called in,
Was reprimanded
by Licht. It was
He still stood up to him too, which it takes real courage in
It
an
does,
organization
yeah.
like
Especially
that,
when
where
you're
firings are.
in a big position like that.
And I know he was forced to do it, but I commended at the time, and I commend Anderson Cooper did a great job. I think
Making it an apology for the town hall. That was not really an apology. It was an explanation about why you have to show both sides, and we have to listen to even people who don't disagree with it. It was like a 5th grade civics lesson.
But he agreed. He said, and I understand why people are upset because I'm upset too. And I was like, oh, okay, go.
That was
understand.
his little signal.
Yeah, that's good. I think that was good. Were you going to say something?
Oh, no. That was clever of him to signal to the audience, I'm not really buying all this.
Right. If they did a wide shot, you see the gun they have to my head as I'm reading
Well,
this.
apparently, since the town hall, Zaslav has been listening to the Tappers and Anderson Cooper's the stars of the network, which is great. But why didn't he do that before he hired somebody? I mean,
Right.
Licht has lots of experience, as you've noted. Why weren't they talking to Scarborough or Colbert? Colbert told him, "Don't do this. You're going to be ground up and
Joe
chewed out."
Scarborough said, whatever you do, don't take that job.
Right.
Stephen Colbert said, whatever you do, don't take that job. He took the job.
Well, that's his ego.
He learned a lot in the last 13 months. He tells
What was his
us.
salary? Was it pretty good?
Oh, a little bit.
Yeah.
but Zucker, the former head,
Jeff Zucker.
Jeff Zucker has got to be one of the happiest people
Oh, yeah.
in
I
broadcasting at this point.
I'm all for like vindictiveness, He's got to be jumping up and down, but he did have at least the grace not to post anywhere. I looked yesterday. I was looking for a moment. There was none. That's good. He'll never get the job back because Zaslav hates him. Yeah. And he also has his failings. He had an affair with someone at the office, which is, okay, I'm not going to cast, unlike the PGA, who I do talk about the morality. I'm not going to talk about his. But all he had to do was admit it. He had to disclose it.
Right.
And he would not be in the situation. So I don't feel really sorry for him as well. There's a clear rule, and he violated it.
And we have just about 10 seconds, but there's no... It's going to take a long time for them to get out of this. I mean, there's a lot of problems that need to be cleared up.
Meltdown at CNN. Wasn't that the name of the article
I
in
think so.
Atlanta?
Yeah, that was the Atlantic
that was very
headline.
apt.
Yeah.
We'll be right back after this. All right, let's go to another story. This story broke actually as the fund drive was ending, and I made brief mention of it as we were doing the whole hullabaloo of the end of the drive. But Pat Robertson, the televangelist and leader of the religious right, has died at the age of 93. For generations of conservative Christians, Pat Robertson was a familiar face on television, guiding them through domestic politics and international affairs on his long-running talk show, The 700 Club. But the controversial televangelist was best known as an architect of the religious right, who frequently made anti-gay remarks, as a pioneer in the Christian broadcasting industry that would elevate many Republican politicians, and briefly as a politician in his own right with presidential aspirations. In a statement Thursday, the Christian Broadcasting Network said Robertson died at home on June 8th, surrounded by family. The son of a powerful U.S. Senator, Robertson grew up around politics, but his roots were in the white evangelical Christian church as an ordained pastor In 1960, he founded the Christian Broadcasting Network, or CBN, as it became to be known, in Virginia, holding telethons to pay the bills. The network and its programs would eventually spread around the world. CBN success spurred Robertson to found a Christian college, now known as Regent University in Virginia Beach, in the late 70s. A decade later, he set his sights higher, making a run for the 1988 Republican presidential nomination as both a social and fiscal conservative. Though his campaign was unsuccessful, it elevated Robertson's profile among politically engaged white evangelicals. The following year, Robertson founded the Christian Coalition in an effort to mobilize those voters. At that time, another group with a similar mission was dissolving the Moral Majority, founded in the 70s by another politically conservative Virginia-based minister, Jerry Falwell. His son, Jerry Falwell Jr., is president of Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia. So that's a brief look. Yes, Mike. That was a brief look at Pat Robertson's career and, dare I say, legacy.
Well, yes, he helped to popularize the anti-constitutional, anti-founding father feeling that church and state were one and the same, should be intimately merged, have lots of influence one and the other, and our country is the less for that. May he rest in peace.
Yeah, it's, he was a controversial figure, certainly. He was somebody who I think seeded prejudice, and, I remember him suggesting that AIDS was God's punishment for gay people, which is just apocryphal for any person of faith to even suggest. And he's just, wasn't there a hurricane that he blamed on?
Yes.
On
Katrina, was it?
Yeah,
Yep.
it was God's wrath for something,
Because it went through, was it South Beach, and it was...
yeah, I mean, it's just he was somebody who did not help.
and he wasn't just one person saying racist, homophobic things. He was a person of influence at the time, and it affected public policy. I mean, it affected AIDS research. I think it affected it slowed down our society's acceptance of gay marriage, and so it had a profound influence on a profound negative influence on our society. And has it continued to this day? I think so. It's hard to find positive things to say about Pat Robertson. I think he did. People turned to his 700 Club, and I never really even understood what the 700 was about. But
Probably
obviously,
biblical
you're
of
not
some
very
kind.
godlike.
No, but he also helped cement that link, that connection between the Republican Party of the 80s and the Christian right, which has paid dividends to both. And now it's very interesting looking back and now looking at the impact of that and looking at the Supreme Court makeup, which was delivered by the Republicans to the religious right, and the result of that with the decision to throw out Roe versus Wade, et cetera. I mean, it's when it's sort of using the muscle of Christianity to basically contradict the constitutional separation of church and state.
Here are some winners from Pat Robertson over the years. When asked about what to do on Facebook when you see pictures of a same-sex couple getting married or kissing, he said that he wished they didn't have a like button but a vomit button. On the issue of adultery, he said males have a tendency to wander a little bit, and what you want to do is make a home so wonderful he doesn't want to wander. On a man with an Alzheimer's stricken wife, I know it sounds cruel, but if he's going to do something, he should divorce her and start all over again. But to make sure she has custodial care and, somebody is looking after her. He went on Walt Disney's Gay Days. I would warn Orlando that you're right in the way of some serious hurricanes, and I don't think I'd be waving those flags in God's face if I were you. It'll bring about terrorist bombs. It'll bring earthquakes, tornadoes, and possibly a meteor. On the role of men and women, I know this is a painful truth for ladies to hear, but if you get married, you have accepted the leadership of a man, your husband. Christ is the head of the household, and the husband is the head of the wife, and that's the way it is, period.
Where's the vomit button?
On feminism, the feminist agenda is not about equal rights for women. It is about a socialist anti-family political movement that encourages women to leave their husbands, kill their children, practice witchcraft, destroy capitalism, and become lesbians.
No, seriously, that's not. Is that really?
That is a quote. That is a quote.
Yeah.
On the devastating 2010 earthquake in Haiti, they were under the heel of the French, Napoleon III and whatever, and they got together and swore a pact to the devil. They said, "We will serve you if you will get us free from the prince." True story, he says. And so the devil said, "Okay, it's a deal." And they kicked the French out. The Haitians revolted and got themselves free, but ever since then, they have been cursed by one thing after another. On Hugo Chavez, I don't know about this doctrine of assassination, but if he thinks we're trying to assassinate him, I think we really ought to go ahead and do it. On homosexuality, many of those people involved in Adolf Hitler were Satanists. Many were homosexuals. The two things do seem to go together. On the tornadoes that ravaged the Midwest in 2012, if enough people were praying, God would have intervened. You could pray. Jesus stilled the storm. You can still storms.
I love how Joe's saying farewell to him with his own words.
That would be my eulogy.
Yeah.
That would just.
I'll just quote Pat Robertson.
Pat Robertson for. I mean, it really is. So often, every once in a while, a news program would grab one of these comments and put it up, and you would just, it would just, oh my God, I can't believe he said that. And but he was just full of them. I mean, day after day after day after day.
And he had millions of followers.
Yes, he did, and he had access to the White House. I mean, he was influential. He had, he could he had the door open for him to the Reagan White House, to the George Herbert Walker Bush White House. Probably not to the Clinton White House, but we're just talking about separation of church and state. This week in Oklahoma, the state approved a charter school, state funding for basically a Christian school, and it's probably going to trigger all kinds of lawsuits, and it will go to the Supreme Court, and who knows how the Supreme Court will act on that, and it's all part of a plan that some religious dilettantes have to make the United States a Christian nation. And what would happen if a state charter board approved an Islamic school or approved a Hindu school? People would be going crazy because it doesn't fit in with their vision of how things are. But there hasn't been much about this. And to think it would even happen 5 years ago would be unthinkable. And now it's kind of... Yeah, I guess so. And our forefathers had great wisdom when they drew that wall between church and state.
You also think of in that foray into politics, of also bringing other people like Pat Buchanan to the fore in the Republican.
Thank you, Richard Nixon.
Race. Yeah.
He was the first who realized that he could get votes by touting anti-abortion rhetoric, and that brought eventually all the evangelicals flocking to the Republican Party.
So
not a happy time.
No. So again, Pat Robertson is dead at the age of 93, and
only the good die young.
To quote Billy Joel, who's still alive, and he's in his 70s, I think.
His son said, that the criticism of his father is politically motivated and driven by left-leaning websites. That drumbeat, I think, has really shaped his public perception of him in a way that I frankly think is unfair. It doesn't take into account all the things that he's done, and by any standard, he's done some incredible things. Oh, they were incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. No. Certainly no complaints, or no complaints, but no, not going to argue with that point. All right, and let's see. Do we have time for one more story? I think we have like 3 minutes. Anybody want to mention anything?
Donald Trump appears to be in trouble again. More trouble since Mueller was about to unleash his report.
You see how that went.
I know. I do worry about that. I just can't be happy yet until it actually happens.
But I think he must be concerned because his Truth Social tweets are kind of off the wall, crazy, if I may use that word. He seems alarmed. He seems all caps, long tweets talking about conspiracy theories against him.
Yeah, he has asserted on Truth Social, I read in a news story, that he had not been informed that he was the subject of a grand jury investigation, a target of a grand jury investigation, which is standard. When you are the target of a grand jury investigation, you're notified by the authorities so that you can put on your defense. And he apparently, according to the New York Times just today, has reported that, in fact, he was notified.
I don't know. Anybody calls him up and asks him for his comment because it's like, is it ever going to be true?
I mean, this is a problem. Yeah, this is.
I could call him and he'll say something, but should we put it in the story if it's not true?
You're getting to an existential question for how the media handles the 2024 presidential election. I like the idea that there's a few people running against him. In the end, having so many people in the field probably benefits Trump, but there's a few in there that I think have taken their gloves off, like Chris Christie. I mean, as one commentator put it, is watch out for the guy who has nothing to lose.
Yeah, I don't know if he'll win, but it's going to be fun watching him fight.
I think that it's up to 10. There's a field of 10 people.
Yeah, it's getting really, and more coming. I mean, we haven't heard from Bolton, oh my God, or Liz Cheney. Yeah.
Real quick before we go, and we're late, but Lori says the reason for the 700 Club name is it refers to the 700 people who donated to get the show started, originally reported by CNN this morning. So there you go on that question. We're back, and I thank everyone for being here. It's wonderful to have you.